There's an alternate universe where in 2002, Lloyd Carr resigns as head coach of Michigan. Not fired, not chased out. He steps away after years of stability, titles, and institutional trust. And Michigan responds by hiring Dennis Erickson. At the time, this makes sense. That's the part that matters. Because this story isn't about whether Michigan was right or wrong. It's about what problem Michigan thought it was solving and what that decision slowly changed about who they were. But first, we need to set the institutional frame. Michigan in the early 2000s doesn't think it has a football problem, it thinks it has a direction problem. Carr represented order, continuity, and internal consensus. But the sport was speeding up. Recruiting, offenses, media pressure, and national pacing. Michigan's leadership doesn't say this publicly, but privately the concern is simple. We are stable, but are we still in control of the future? Hiring Erickson is not a panic move. It's a modernization bet. He has championships, NFL credibility, offensive reputation. On paper, this looks like Michigan choosing flexibility, but something feels subtly off almost immediately. Not losses, not scandal, but tone. The early results are fine. Michigan wins 8 games, but then goes to 7 and then 6. They're bowl eligible, they're visible, but they're never broken. But what's missing is harder to name. The offense changes year to year. Recruiting feels less anchored. The program stops feeling like the reference point for the Big Ten. Michigan has not collapsed, it's drifted. And drift is harder to correct than failure, because nothing forces urgency. While Michigan is solving for flexibility, Clemson is solving for the opposite problem. Clemson fires Tommy Bowden after a 22-14 stretch that looks okay in isolation but unstable in rhythm. Clemson doesn't think it lacks talent, it thinks it lacks adult control, so it hires Lloyd Carr. Again, reasonable at the time. Carr brings structure, discipline, defensive clarity, and institutional calm. From 2007 through 2011, Clemson wins between 7 and 10 games almost every year. Nothing flashy, nothing chaotic. But Clemson stops wobbling. And here's the subtle shift. Clemson learns what stability feels like without mistaking it for the destination. Michigan, meanwhile, never quite decides what Erickson was meant to be. Was he a bridge, a new identity, a temporary reset? Because Michigan never answers that, it hesitates. And hesitation becomes a pattern. By the early 2010s, Michigan moves on again, not toward experimentation, but toward control. They hire Greg Schiano. This isn't nostalgia, it's an overcorrection. Michigan doesn't want imagination, it wants discipline, order, and professionalism. Schiano delivers on that. From 2012 through the late 2010s, Michigan is steady. 8 wins, 9 wins, bowl games, respect, but still no gravity. No one builds their season around Michigan anymore. Clemson faces the same pivot moment and makes a different call. After Carr steps away quietly in 2011, Clemson doesn't chase another stabilizer. They hire Jimbo Fisher away from Florida State. This wasn't about wins. Jimbo was 19-8 in his first 2 years at FSU. It's about infrastructure, autonomy, and belief. Behind the scenes, Jimbo is frustrated with limitations he doesn't think will change. Clemson promises the opposite. This is Clemson saying, we're stable, now we accelerate. And the on-field results reflect that shift. From 2013 forward, Clemson isn't just winning, it's inevitable. 11 wins, 12 wins, playoff appearances, national relevance that doesn't flicker. Not because of emotion, but because of alignment. This matters beyond Clemson and Michigan. The ACC becomes a one-anchor league. Clemson isn't always the best team in America, but it's always trusted. The playoff committee treats Clemson as safe. Michigan never earns that. Even when Michigan improves again in the 2020s, 10 wins, playoff berths under Matt Campbell, It's treated as a participant, but not a pillar. The Big Ten still runs through Ohio State. Michigan is respected, but they're no longer defining. That distinction doesn't come from a single loss. It came from a decade of identity management instead of identity leadership. So let's rewind back to 2002. Michigan lets Lloyd Carr walk, and they hire Dennis Erickson. The decision isn't reckless, it's not foolish, it's not doomed, it's reasonable, but it reveals something important about how institutions think. Michigan believed it was choosing flexibility. What it actually did was loosen its internal compass. Clemson believed it was choosing stability. What it actually did was buy itself the right moment to change. Same ingredients, different sequencing. There's no villain here. Michigan didn't fail. Clemson didn't get unlucky. Both schools solved real problems the way institutions do, incrementally, cautiously, and defensively. The only question this universe leaves open is a quiet one. When stability works, how do you know when it's done its job? And if you enjoyed this kind of institutional what happens next storytelling, hit like, drop your take in the comments, and subscribe. Because sometimes the most important decisions aren't the loud ones, they're the reasonable ones that slowly change who you are.